Hello, pre-K students. Welcome everybody to my TaiteTalk. I'm Tate, and I'm talking. So let's just imagine for a second. You're back in school, you're in your chair, you're learning, and yet, somehow, it feels different. Imagine the facts you learned weren't just for the sake of memorization, and that the curriculum wasn't just strict guidelines for your entire educational career. Imagine school was revolutionized to include humanity and freedom first and foremost. A school where social imagination flourishes. This is the mindset of Maxine Greene. I didn't know much, or well, anything about Maxine Greene until I was prompted to give a speech about her. But during my research, I did find an article that was entitled Teaching Under the Influence of Maxine Greene. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. I didn't use the article, and I didn't find any wild stories about her party days, but I did find some pretty cool articles about her in general. So let's dive into that. So Maxine Greene was born in 1917 in Brooklyn, New York. She grew up in a family that discouraged intellectual adventure and risk. This, from an early age, had her seek out a life that was beyond ordinary. She found peace in her local library, where she collected words like treasures. Imagine that. She was quite fond of poetry, particularly the work of Edna St. Vincent Millering. Say that 5 times fast. Due to its simplicity and raw emotion, she found escape in concerts, plays, and the arts. Anything to let the imagination flow. Greene grew up with a fierce drive to explore beyond her own privileged background, which came from her family's successful business. This aside, she was still expected to behave like a woman. Yeah, sure. Behave like a woman in 1917, if you will. Whatever that means. I guess that just means, live your early years through World War I and the Great Depression, watch your family suffer a whole stock market crash. It's very womanly of 1917. Jokes aside, these events created a sense of nationalism within the country that brought unity and conformity. Maxine was different. She was a compulsive storyteller who came to political consciousness in college after meeting members of anti-fascist forces in Spain. She was an ardent feminist, a crusader against anti-Semitism, and a critic of capitalism. Her field of study was both philosophical and educational, aiming to bring the ideas of art and imagination into the world, teaching, and learning. Greene argued that education shouldn't just impart knowledge, it should develop students' capacity to imagine, empathize, and critically engage with the world. It was, in essence, progressive education. It was super duper Dewey. Well, who she cited most often in her work, actually, so props to John Dewey, everybody. I know we love reading about him right now. Her educational theories draw on the writings of phenomenologists, and existentialists. I am not even going to attempt the names of the people that influenced her. So, if you would all please join me right now in the following slideshow that's going to show all the names, I invite the audience to try to say them out loud. Yeah, that was pretty cool, right? I probably could have nailed one of the names on there. Anyways, Greene's educational philosophy was centered on the idea of imagination and awareness. She argued that classrooms should be spaces where imagination could flourish, places filled with dialogue and laughter that allowed students to explore diverse ideas. For Greene, it was essential that these spaces also fostered justice, freedom, and a respect for human rights. At the heart of her theory was the belief that education should also promote wide awakeness, a deep reflective consciousness that allowed students to envision new possibilities. She was very wary of detached, one-dimensional ways of teaching and encouraged teachers to create environments that resonated with life's complexity, where students could look from many vantage points and construct new meaning for themselves. Greene's approach to learning through art, called aesthetic education, was a unique aspect of her work. Through art, she believed students could engage in a kind of imaginative exercise that revealed alternative possibilities for their own becoming. Art, she argued, helps students develop empathy,
perception, and critical reflection, all capacities that often go unaddressed in traditional education but are critical for understanding different perspectives.
So the question is, who did she become? What even was Maxine Greene? Well, to sum it up, she spent 20 years as the philosopher in residence at the Lincoln Center for Arts and Education, where she nurtured a passion for the creation of the Center for the Arts, Social Imagination, and Education at the Teachers College, where she is a professor emeritus of philosophy and education. What a sentence. She is the past president of the American Educational Research Association, the American Educational Studies Association, and the Philosophy of Education Society. An advocate for the common school, she is also a friend of the many Klingstein Center graduates for whom her presentations are legendary.
So sure, it's easy to just be a hater and ask, why do I care about Maxine Greene's really nice and cool and good perspective on education? But as future educators, Greene's work remains highly relevant in today's diverse classrooms, where students bring a range of cultural backgrounds, life experiences, and perspectives. Whether you agree with the news or not, it still broadcasts, and students watching it may see a world of inequality and differences dividing many.
Greene's philosophy promotes classrooms where students can better understand each other and learn to see the world with empathy and dialogue.
I always say the teacher at my school I'm the most jealous of is the art teacher. I mean, well, with Greene's philosophy implemented, maybe I wouldn't be as much. In advocating for art in the classroom and imaginative approaches to learning, Greene pushed for an educational model that values emotional and social growth as well as intellectual growth, a vision that remains at the core of progressive education today. This ties into her ideas of social emotional learning, which focuses on the whole child rather than academic achievement.
Personally, I find Greene's ideas inspiring. Her idea that education should be an awakening, a process of becoming fully aware of our place in the community, it totally aligns with my own goals as a future teacher. In my view, her approach allows teachers to not only teach, but to create spaces where students feel seen and heard, where they can truly explore their identities and potential through creative processes, social imagination, all that wonderful stuff that we just talked about.
That said, Greene's theories might be challenging to apply in standard classrooms focused on testing and standardized curricula. How can we create spaces that value imagination when educational policies often prioritize measurable policies and results? Balancing Greene's visionary ideas with practical realities may require creativity and persistence, but her work offers a powerful framework for rethinking what education could be.
Well, this is the part of the speech that I know you're all dreading. The end. So with that being said, before we go, I ask you all this. How can we, as future educators, make space for imagination and empathy in a structured educational system? I challenge you to reflect on the ways that we can bring Greene's philosophy to all of your futures in teaching, whether it's through integrating art, allowing for open-ended projects, or simply encouraging our students to question. Each have the potential to cultivate a more imaginative, empathetic learning environment.
And with all of that said, I leave with a corny joke. To reduce, reuse, recycle, and go green. Can't believe I just said that. Alright, goodbye pre-K classroom, and thank you to Greenport and Miss Walden for allowing me to use her room for this awesome talk.